Querida Teresa, muchas gracias por haber cambiado la agenda y muchas gracias por estar acá. El palco es tuyo, so please have the floor.
Good morning, everybody. I have to start by saying that I came here to say that everything that Nuno has said, not in these last 5 minutes, but during the 2 days, is absolutely right. And that whatever the legal service of the Commission has said, they are right. Once I say that, I would like to express my appreciation and gratitude. First, for the invitation. I think it is quite a quiet and timely invitation in these turbulent days to speak about rationality, fairness, inclusiveness, level playing field. Sounds like revolutionary, as it was probably at the beginning when thinking about the antitrust law. But second, because I would like to express in these very first comments also my gratitude for all of you being here, exchanging views, learning from each other, trying to identify the best way forward. And of course, I would like to express my gratitude to the Autoridad de la Concurrencia de Portugal and its services for being able to prepare so generously this conference. It is always a great pleasure to be in Lisbon. It is even a greater pleasure being with you all. So thanks, Nuno, for this invitation. And I was thinking what to say in this occasion to end with a kind of positive message, and at the very same time being aware that you have probably gone through very tough, difficult, challenging issues during these 2 days. So I thought that, in fact, there may be 3 simple comments that were important to be made to remind ourselves why we are here, what we intend to do, how we try to proceed. First, to remind ourselves that competition policy looks at facts, not fiction. Sometimes we hear about fictions, science fiction in case of some demands, some requests coming from some authorities. But no, we need to pay attention to facts. Second, we need to ensure that competition policy looks ahead. It is part of the tools we count on to come along with not only social science, including economics and law, but society as such, and the challenges that evolve every single year, every single day. And third, why we need a competition policy that looks across the board. I was saying at the beginning that yes, competition policy looks at facts and not fiction. Small reminder to say that this means understanding what policy can and cannot do. Competition policy can stop companies from coordinating in ways that harm workers, but it cannot regulate working conditions. It can take action against cartels that inflate banks' profits, but it cannot regulate financial markets. And above all, in the European Union, competition policy can ensure that markets are competitive and fair. But even if we could like, we cannot create, deepen, or dive in the single market. This is also relevant when speaking about European champions. There are things that we can do, such as improving our capacity to assess complementarities and innovation in corporate operations. And there are things that we cannot do, such as backing restrictions in a competitive market against consumer rights. But it may help if we combine our job with that of deepening the single market and lifting national barriers. This is ultimately what we could help in order to allow European companies and markets to reach scale. And this is a challenging task, and we need to perseverate. Because this is why it is so important to remind us that many strategic markets, banking, capital markets, energy, telecoms, still remain fragmented along national lines. And a strong and integrated single market is Europe's greatest source of resilience, prosperity, innovation, and global influence in this given moment, particularly important. If this is what allows our firms to grow, our workers to thrive, our citizens to enjoy real choice and opportunity, we need to keep on updating, learning, and building, working with our colleagues, trying to develop and deepen our single market, to raise the capacities, to overcome the barriers, to identify the opportunities to keep on doing. The single market remains Europe's best element to contribute to a successful industrial policy, to reward innovation, to enable scale, to attract investment where Europe wants to lead: clean tech, semiconductors, advanced manufacturing, artificial intelligence, and so on and so on. In practice, we know that having a single market often means having a single set of European rules. So when thinking about these claims to deregulate, we should bear in mind that deregulation could in fact mean turning back to 27 different regulations. Could mean blowing up the most relevant project of the European Union based on the construction of a single market. At the very same time, this means removing barriers to our economy, activity, and ensuring a level playing field. This is why we will still need to work on how we can improve the chance to keep on building a single market. But I was saying that competition policy also looks ahead. It moves with markets and societies, and it is closely linked to how markets work, and market dynamics change over time, and those adaptations need to be taken into consideration because they change realities. Where consumers change their habits or companies adjust their practices, it affects how companies compete. And yes, of course, we have realities that are driving the markets differently, that are building different strategic positions among the different corporates competing in our markets. If consumers and companies change, so must our analysis of competition do evolve. We did it when we adopted the Digital Markets Act, when we adopted the foreign subsidies regulation, when we worked on how to take into account sustainability as a competition parameter in agreements, and now when we are reviewing our merger guidelines. 20 years ago, at the first edition of this conference organized in 2005, participants discussed what was then the new European merger regulation. At that time, the horizontal merger guidelines had been adopted as well. The guidelines of non-horizontal mergers followed shortly after. 20 years later, the world has changed, and so we must take a close look at the merger guidelines. Over the summer, we held a public consultation about this review, looking at the range of topics which attracted impressive engagement from the competition family. We have been busy reading through and analyzing the valuable input received, including perhaps from many of you in this room. And next week, we aim to publish summaries of the contributions received. On substance, let me zoom in a couple of improvements that we are taking into consideration. We will modernize the way we identify mergers that could harm European companies or consumers, while also providing clear guidance on the types of growth at scale that strengthen the single market. Mergers that help companies expand into new countries or markets with little overlap can be positive. Companies operating across several member states and offering high-quality products help break down trade barriers and make the European market more connected. This is especially important in sectors where it is hard to grow naturally across borders, such in the case of telecoms. Many markets are still largely national, showing that there is room for more integration. When companies combine complementary strengths to create new European capabilities and compete with global players, This can boost competition and make the European economy more resilient to shocks. Their growth doesn't just benefit their shareholders, it benefits customers, societies, and the markets as a whole. But this cannot be a blank check. Bigger companies are not always the answer, especially if they reduce choice instead of increasing them. Our revised guidelines will provide clear and upfront guidance, including concrete criteria on when scale can benefit the single market. To do this, the guidelines may provide guidance on mergers that may support competitiveness, innovation, and resilience. They will complement our toolbox with modern metrics to assess market power, innovation, investments. They will aim to support certainty for innovators and startups that need a scale in our single market by clearly defining situations in which we will not intervene. This is a sort of innovation shield for pro-competitive scale-ups. We will try to set out a more comprehensive framework for considering dynamic efficiencies which may bring us benefits in the medium term. This will help companies to innovate faster, invest more, or challenge the market power of existing players. This could, in principle, weigh positively in our assessment and could be framed in the revised guidelines. Resilience may also become increasingly relevant in our assessment in those cases where it matters to the market or to consumers. For example, think about the Russian war against Ukraine. The invasion, the uncertainty around global trade demonstrates the clear need for reliable and resilient supply chains. In the revised guidelines, it may be important to show when mergers enhance this resilience of the single market. For example, vertical mergers, securing access to critical inputs, or encouraging investment in secure infrastructure. For example, when they reduce resilience, such as those eliminating essential suppliers and forcing customers to take riskier alternatives, we may decide in an upfront manner, stating to what extent this is dangerous. These are things that we need to take into consideration, paying attention to your comments up to now, paying attention to your comments when this summary has been published and you may want to react. Our aim is simple. The guidelines are a great opportunity to give companies the clarity they need to pursue industrial ambitions while preserving Europe's competitive and dynamic market. An open, successful market economy with high social and environmental standards, a single market where operators compete relying on a fair level playing field, an open market where others may want to enter even if keeping lower standards deserves also attention from our end. In a single market where corporates stick to the high standards, it is our duty to ensure the level playing field also when compared to those coming from abroad and willing to be players in the same market. This is an increasing concern that also deserves further attention, not only from the perspective of the competition toolkit, but also being taken into consideration in this field. We may work and learn from the foreign subsidies regulation. Indeed, by complementing the state aid control that applies to member states, the foreign subsidies regulation can help to some extent, as it is the case when assessing mergers and agreements that we need to, and that we do, to take into account when assessing externalities that could imply hidden costs that need to be part of any economic assessment in these days. But in the meantime, this may be one of the topics that could probably count on a debate around economic security conditionalities to complement the discussions on the Industrial Accelerator Act. Finally, let's think on how we can enforce fair competition across all sectors to the benefit of our citizens. Fair competition also means fairer conditions for workers, as I was saying when using this as an example at the beginning. Across Europe, we are uncovering anti-competitive practices that harm workers, from wage fixing to no-poach agreements that limit mobility and depress salaries. The Portuguese Competition Authority has been a front-runner on this area, being one of the first authorities sanctioning competitors for restricting employees' hiring opportunities. Its leadership inspired other authorities across the European Union to act, strengthening competition for one of our most vital resources: labour, people. At the European level, we too have acted decisively. Our Delivery Hero decision of this year tackled collusion in online food delivery, and in late 2024, we conducted inspections in the data center construction sector, examining potential restrictions on labour mobility. Our actions show that effective enforcement can directly protect workers' rights, opportunities, and ultimately fair pay. Competition enforcement also plays a vital role in the pharmaceutical sector, where it can affect access to affordable medicines. Yesterday, the European Court of Justice confirmed our decision in the pay for delay case involving the pharmaceutical companies Teva and Cephalon. The judges confirmed that these companies colluded to delay generic, so cheaper, drugs from entering the market. The ruling confirms that it is illegal not only to pay competitors to stay out of the market, but also to use hidden side deals that effectively transfer money to keep generic out. This supports our approach in fighting practices that may affect national health budgets, taxpayers, and patients. It also encourages us to keep going with our work in the pharmaceutical sector. As you know, we have been looking at disparagement conduct in recent years. Recent examples including cases against Teva and Vifor. What we are doing here is enforcement that really matters. Timely and affordable access to medicines for multiple sclerosis or for iron deficiency, as in this case, are a question of sometimes life and death. And we continue our work. A few weeks ago, we carried out dawn raids looking once again at possible anti-competitive disbursement, this time in the vaccine sector. And yes, it's true, we come across the board. Think about how competition policy can help hand to those that try to achieve relevant public goals, such as, for instance, facilitating a speedy and fair green economy. A big challenge: how we can ensure a fair competitive economy based on real costs being reflected in the final price, including externalities. It is something that the environmental economists have been working on for decades through taxation and regulation, and we may need to step up how we tackle that from a competition policy perspective. That's why we issued our first guidance letter on a sustainability agreement, giving companies clarity on how they can cooperate to advance environmental goals while staying within competition rules. We also focus on critical raw materials, key for a competitive European industry in clean tech, in defence, in the digital to come. Through the Critical Raw Materials and Recycling Project launched in April this year, we have been engaging with the stakeholders to learn more about their possible needs in terms of cooperation in procurements, recycling and reusing of raw materials. We want to understand better how cooperation, such as joint offtake or recycling initiatives, can support citizens and companies' green and resilience objectives while preserving fair competition and innovation. These are some examples, some simple aspects of what it is inspiring your day-to-day practice, your day-to-day life, that are very important. So I would like to leave you today with a simple message. Europe's competitiveness will not come from weakening competition, will not come from weakening the standards, will not come from lowering the expectations of a high-quality life that our citizens rely on. Competition policy is about preventing excessive power. It has always been the case, and it is therefore critical to our democracy. This is a very basic, primary, fundamental message, but particularly important in these days. Nor will competitiveness come from ignoring climate change, lowering our standards, or deregulating instead of simplifying. If it is simple, fantastic. But please do not compromise the values and the standards. We cannot ignore the externalities of our economic choices. Competition tools can help with this. So can our single market. No competitiveness in a race to the bottom. Competitive, innovative, and high-quality expectations in terms of high-quality life remain core values in our project. Thanks so much.